folks, I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective, each day asking ourselves what happened today and what might it tell us about tomorrow. I do a show time 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of the Rocky Mountains. Folks, that was music, John Hoffman. A good friend of mine, used to work with him. He plays a beautiful sax, and if you're interested in his music, go over to TATV, pop down to all channels, go down to the bottom, you can hit his link, you can go check out his music. Real good guy. I did a event only lost art of hedging today for members. That's available now, members only, for you to review, or if you weren't able to make it this afternoon, you can check it out here on your video library. So for members, just pop in there and you can check that out. As far as the markets, what happened today? Well, right back the other way, folks. It never seems to fail. This market finds a way to claw its way back higher day after day, time after time. I don't know how to describe it in any other way. So let's look at the ending numbers here. Let me grab the numbers, pop them over, zero in, and see what we got. All right, so that's the Dow. Let's pop to the major major indexes, closing quotes. Industrials, 116 higher, 16,373, almost 374. The S&P's tacked on 19.5. They basically got back what they all lost yesterday. S&P's up 19.5. 1838, almost 1839. Composite tacks on 69. Composite actually closes at a new high, and a high for the year, 4183. The NDX 67 higher, 3580.5, and the Russell tax on a good percentage as well, 1.34, 1163.5. Over in the rest of the markets, we had commodities down a little bit. Yesterday they were up huge. Today they're down. Not down big today, but down nevertheless. The dollar pops up a little bit, and bonds sold off some today. As far as what these markets look like, here's the S&P. Let's pull this in tighter so we can see. Here we go. Okay, so S&Ps, what do? They come, actually, I don't have the S&Ps. Let's get the S&Ps. So let me pop back over here. I was taking a look at the sectors before we came on the air. And general markets, S&P 500. Okay, here we go. So what do? We come back up. We actually got an inside day, and we got an inside day on most of these markets, not just the S&P. And what I mean by inside day is if you take the bar from yesterday, today you've got a bar that's inside of yesterday's bar. Well, what we did do that's different, and that is that we have basically a takeaway bar. A takeaway bar to me is anytime you have a big move one day, and then the next day you come back and you just take it all away. And that's pretty much what you got here, right? I mean, so we've had 2 big spikes down off the top. Yesterday, volume expands a little bit. Today, it's not that bad. Inside day, you're right back up there. You're right back up there inside the higher range, right? So everything that happened yesterday was all for naught. In other words, you're right back up inside this thing now. So you can't look at that and say it's bad. You know, last night we were talking about there was a retest regen zone that we thought it was going to try to come after, and the only reason we thought that was because the sectors looked like they were suggesting it. As I said last night, they don't have to come hit that. They didn't come hit it. They gapped higher, got a little bit of a sell-off this morning, and then just plunged straight back the other way and never stopped. And that looks pretty much like what you're going to see on most of these. Russell's going to be the same. This takeaway bar. This one actually got back over that high, didn't it? 160. No, it's inside day also. NDX though and the NASDAQ, different story. These guys get over the prior day. They're back up, pushing for the highs. And the NDX now is over, I believe, the second. 35.67. It is 35.80. The IXIC definitely is because it set new highs today. And if I go over here and look at the Dow Jones, this is the weakest of the lot. Dow Jones is really struggling. It's not even back inside the range. Now, for a while there, the Dow was the strongest. But if you look here, right, you kind of got a range up there. You came down. You were trying to get to the retest zone, didn't get to it. You're just barely, well, you're just at the point where you're going to try to get back into the higher range. So a good day tomorrow would push that up in there. What does that tell me? Well, you know, unlike most commentators, I'm not going to tell you that I know exactly what's going to happen unless I have some pretty good clues, and usually the market gives you some pretty good clues. Takeaway bars are decent clues in that if you can't hold or extend what you tried to do, then you got to think that move wasn't nearly as strong as it may have looked, and that's clearly what happened today. So based on that alone, if we look at just the indexes, it looks to me like these things are going to try to push up and get back, like for example the Dow, get back into the higher part of this range. The SPX tried to get over that down bar. You know, the SPX, that top was 1845, almost 1846. We're at 1838, so it's about 7 points away. So you can see that these things are going to try to push up there and do it again. The Russell, well, the OTC, the NASDAQ, the Russell, those guys are already doing it. They were the strength again today. They were the strength on the way up, right? And they were the ones pushing. The listed issues were the ones pulling. Today it's the same, right? You got outperformance in the OTC, underperformance in the listed. If we go over and look at the sectors, I was glancing through these. Most of these sectors show the same thing that the listed issues do, and that is that almost all of them are inside bars. So you got an inside bar here. That's the IYT, where you have the outside bar and actually new highs as SMHs. This was the power all day long. These were up 2%. So you got huge power in the chips. You got an Intel upgrade to 30. Wells Fargo, I think, issued that today. LLTC reported after close. Their earnings weren't bad. They came in, they came in a little light again for the quarter. They raised their dividend a penny, and they talked about year-over-year numbers being better. But all in all, it wasn't that, there was nothing special about theirs. We can look real quickly. There was two reports today. Wells Fargo traded down and then traded back up. So you see Wells Fargo came all the way down. Now this is interesting. I didn't see the ending numbers here. So this was 17 million and it came back into it with 28 million. So this is the Fed bar, 28 million. The quad witching bar, 29 million. You hit it with 27, almost 28 million. That's actually very interesting because that says this thing's probably going to be range bound. Let me see what JP Morgan did, what kind of volume it pushed. So JP Morgan, even more so, he couldn't even get going. So now this is a tell. Let's go look at the XLF while we're doing this. I'm thinking the XLF was the weakest today. And yeah, this looks more like the Dow, right, if you compare them. Volume's not there. You can't lift inside day. That kind of makes me think a little bit different about what I just said, and that is that yeah, they came down here, they tested into that retest. I believe these actually tested retest regens, didn't they? 2164. No, they missed it. This is going to come back. This is going to fail at the, even if it pushes up there, it's probably going to fail. Now we got more financial earnings all this week. But that first two, neither one of them looks good. Let me go back to JP Morgan. So this is doing the retest regen. It pushed into it yesterday and pushed right back into it today. This is going to try to blow out this. This is going to try to fail on the retest regen. I mean, that low is 57.41. You clipped the bottom of it yesterday almost, 57.53, 57.56. This is going to test the bottom and more than likely get all the way back into what is the Fed day bars, and that's the 18th and the 20th. That's where this little green zone is here. So that one doesn't look good. And then when I look at Wells Fargo and the volume that came into this one on the push down, that tells me this thing's probably range bound. And when I say range bound, it's got this higher range it's working in, and then it's got another range underneath there. And it looks to me like it's going to come back and test this again and try to break down into this big bar. So the financials are not going to be the source of a push. And that's important because the financials have been so strong. And why it's important is if you look at the XLE itself, I don't believe is going to be the source of the push. You have three major sectors in the S&P 500: technology, energy, financials. Not in that order, but those three. Energy, this is a big range trade, right? It's in the lower end of the range, inside day, less volume. That one's probably not going anywhere. XLF we just looked at. The one strong one is the XLK. So you got outperformance on the NASDAQ. That's the XLK. This is still just a little bit weaker because you got other things in here that are not in the NASDAQ NDX, like IBM, for example. IBM will report probably next week. I don't have the exact date on it, but that one, yeah, that one's doing the retest and so far is regenning, but it's hitting it with volume. Let me see, the breakout bar was here. It's hitting it with volume. I don't think that one's going anywhere. I don't know, man. That's interesting. All right, let's keep going here and see if there's any more tells. So XLI industrials still hanging at the highs in the higher range. Haven't done the retest. They still look okay. The XLK I just looked at. The XLP going nowhere fast. XLU we know is weak. XLV is actually pretty strong. This one did the takeaway bar as well and actually closed at a new high, 57.08. Yeah, but this one also I think is probably stretches far. And here's an interesting, every day they come in here and they tell you, and they being, the various popular press about, this caused that, or, the market went up today because of this or that. Well, there was retail sales numbers today, and the story is that, the market went up because of retail sales that were much stronger than expected. Okay, so if that's true, then riddle me this. Why did this not move? Why did the retail sector, why was it unable to even get back over the Fed bar? Right? I mean, it's total nonsense. Everybody coming in here telling you exactly why this happened or why that happened. Right? This broke down. It tried to do a retest regen. It failed. Now it's coming back up. It's bouncing a little bit, and it's going to fail here, and it's going to go lower. If you're buying retail, you're in the wrong sector. Right? And the nonsense they print about, this sector or that sector, being the cause, retail numbers, even if retail is strong, it sure as heck isn't making it to the companies, or the companies are totally overvalued or something, because this picture doesn't jive with that notion. So looking at the second, now this is a good one, right? Last night the sectors made me think that we're probably going to try to work a little bit lower this morning before getting a real bounce and probably get that retest regen in. That was yesterday. Tonight, I look at the indexes and they look like they probably want to go higher tonight instead of lower. And the sectors on the flip side making me think that we can't go higher. So, I'm not going to say I know what it's going to do, because I honestly don't. It's going to take another bar or two to figure this thing out. This thing, takeaway bars to me have a big place in that they say, hey, it's not nearly as weak as you thought, or it's not nearly as strong as you thought. In this case, not as weak. The sectors, XLF, that's bothersome the way it traded off earnings. Earnings do not necessarily bring the market back, at the beginning. But over a few days, weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, the first earnings are usually the strongest ones, and these weren't able to move the market. They themselves weren't moving the market today. The market was moving on M&A today. Google, big takeover. We had 3 takeovers today. And that was what was moving this market. And if you want to know in particular, take a look at Google, up a good percentage again today. Take a look at Apple. Apple was down at 5:30 yesterday. Here it is all the way back up there. This is what's moving the market. This is 30%. And then to add the semis to it, if you want to say what moved the market, it was chips and the 2 big technology companies. And I think Microsoft actually was up today too. Yeah, it was. So Microsoft tested that bottom again, tried to take it out. We talked about it trying to do that, and now it's back in it. So Microsoft looks like, I didn't notice this last night. I probably should have noticed this. It was an ABCD structure just finished. You can see it right there. So Microsoft is probably going to keep trying to work a little bit higher, maybe come back into these bars. All right, let's look at the ox markets and see if there's anything useful there. And I'll start with the bonds, because the bonds have been holding up pretty well. They were down a little bit today. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, volume expands a little bit. So the bonds are coming back into the big spike up bar. 104.54 was that high. You close inside of it. Okay, so it looks to me like these are going to try to drift in a little bit more. If the bonds are coming in, that's usually okay for equities. That's good for equities. Gold and silver. Actually, let's look at the dollar. Dollar did nothing. And the euro. So the dollar did hold so far. That's I guess that's a good sign, actually. Maybe not a good sign for the gold bugs. Yeah, euro's not going anywhere either. And let's go back to gold and silver now. Where's gold? There it is. So gold was down a little bit today. Still holding that little breakout gap. Volume expands a bit. It's coming back in here to test 102.05. And then it's underneath it, so it's inside this bar. So tomorrow, what is tomorrow? Wednesday? Tomorrow is actually a pretty big day then for gold, because you really would like to see, if you're bullish this, long this, you want to see it hold that gap. And it's a weaker. The trend is down, intermediate, and long, so you definitely don't want to see it just give it all up. Silver actually got more volume as it pushed into the high, so that will probably carry back up again. Okay, so let me answer a few questions, and then I'll pop over and look at Europe and the other markets real quick. Let's see what we got here. So so that was part of the event earlier today. I put my take profit at 184.18 to take 40%. What Federico here is talking about. We got along the SPYs yesterday on that big drop, and if I go back to the general markets, we bought into the weakness yesterday as it came down here in the Qs and so forth, and today, I actually had profits for us to take some quick profits on partial positions as we bounced. Federico saying he wants to take his out at 184.18, which is what, the highs? Not quite. Is this high? Yeah. Yeah, you probably get it. You know, I would just watch it, and you know, 184.18 is this high. It certainly looks like it's going to try to tag it. So, and that was yesterday's high. That looks reasonable, and you did better than me. You hung on. You got the whole move today, which is even better. So, and you forgot to say good evening. Good evening, sir. Did the EEM test a swing point low and hold on the daily is another question. Well, let's see. Okay, so well, you're talking about a swing point low. The last swing point low was over here. So we had broken. So really, when you're looking at this now, this is really a retest regen situation going on, right? So in other words, this low, that bar, right, has a low, and there was actually two of them. There was another one from over here. So you have two of them. And so as this has pushed down and under, right, now it's coming back up, and what's it going to do? It's going to retest and attempt to regenerate down, right, off of that trend that's in place, which is down, right? So the retest of this prior swing point low, and in this case this is actually the prior one, but this one has the smaller range. So you take the smaller range to start with and say, okay, can it regenerate in that smaller range? Because that's, you know, that would be the first test. And so we'll see. I mean, it's coming back up into it. It got into it here on this bar, had nice volume, came back up today. It's getting back up in there. We'll see if it gets up into it a little bit deeper. Certainly, if our markets go up, it probably will. This thing, you know, if it's going to turn, it has to break the cycle, right? And how do you break the cycle? Well, you break the retest regen. You don't allow the retest to actually regenerate lower. You break out. And so, you know, always when you're in a trend, that's what you're looking at. Every time you set lows, you come back, you test them. That's what you're trying to do. So, no, it's not really that. It's really a retest regen. You're coming back into the swing point lows. Let me pop over to overseas. Take a look at some of these real quick. So, since I have a little time. I saw today that Mexico is opening up their oil drilling. They're holding in a nice higher high. I'm going to pull this out so we can get the weeklies as well. So they got this nice range going on. They're trying to break out. Yeah, they don't actually look bad at all. Let's go to this two strong ones over in Asia real quick. So Taiwan, they had done a retest, tried to regen, and they did regen. Now they're drifting back in. You got a big volume spike into that zone. That's going to try to come back in there still. That high again. They're going to come back in there and try to test the latest high over here as well. So Taiwan looks to, you know, come back in some more, back down into this zone again. Where's the other one? The Nikkei had been the strongest one, along with the Taiwan. Nikkei got hammered last night. It's going to bounce tonight. Need to get rid of this bad bar because they were closed the day before. Okay, so it comes into the 13th, which had a lot more volume. Got into it, held into it. It's going to get a bounce here. It looks to me like it's going to get a bounce back up into this high, back up into that region. So, you know, if you get over this, then you can go back for your highs again. If you don't, you know, you could set up another move down. A lot of these have already done little ABCDs down. This one looks like it has. So they're complete. They should try to bounce. Let me see what China looks like through the Hang Seng. Alright, so boy, these guys can't get out of their own way, can they? Well, it looks like it's going to hold a little bit longer, but it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. Because at this point, this still has an ABCD structure down, right? It still has that structure. It just hasn't been able to finish it. You know, it wants to finish it down here somewhere, but so far it hasn't broken. You know, it did a break, came right back over it, it keeps trying, but it hasn't been able to really break yet. The real break would be here. If it really gets underneath this and breaks this low, then you'll get that extension and finish it off. And it still looks like it's going to try to before it's over. So Asia, that market doesn't look good. Let me quickly look at resource country Australia. See what those guys are doing. Then we'll pop over and look at Brazil. Did I click that? Okay, so Australia, yeah, so Australia's coming back. And that would make sense. I mean, these guys are feeding China. China's not growing. Okay, so, and by feeding, I mean resources. Okay, so how are you going to go up? Well, the only way you can go up is you either find a new buyer, which I don't think they're going to do anytime soon, or you devalue your currency enough, which is what they had been doing, or you just suffer the consequences, which is what it looks like they're doing. Let me go over and look at Brazil. Brazil is in the same boat. And Brazil had already broken out lows, and they're still down there. They can't even. They tried to retest, and they're regenerating lower. And on the weekly, they're in danger of going all the way back into that high of that low. So Brazil, so resource countries not doing very well. Toronto is another resource country, and they've decided that they're going to devalue everything and raise theirs, and that's how they're hanging on. They, you know, if you go look at their currency, like what is it, EW? Australia is EWA. Australia has been, you know, currency devaluation, a big one today again. Canada is EWC, I believe. Yeah, and you can see the devaluation here. And actually, I think if you put it over here, you can see an even larger one. And that's just starting. They're starting to devalue it. So Canada's devaluing their currency. Australia, they all have to, right? I mean, that's what the world's come to. The only way you can export is you devalue. Unless you're Germany, I guess. Let me look at Germany, talking about Germany real quick. Let's pop in here. That's the strongest one. A pretty good bounce today. The FTSE. And then we'll look at CACs. Yeah. FTSE's okay with the mining. CACs also okay. So all these are going to try to push up, and then they'll go after their big bars. Okay, so what's the takeaway? You know, if I pop back over one more time here and wrap it up, I can't help but be positive on the market because the market forces you to be positive. In other words, the trend has been up. That hasn't broken, that hasn't changed. And until it does, you know, you got to believe that this thing can continue up, right? That hasn't changed. That's the same. It's the same as it's been. The problem is that, you know, since the beginning of the year, this hasn't been able to go anywhere. And if we look at those sectors, right, your financials, right, the financials, the technology, and the energy sectors, those are the big ones. This one's struggling. So is this one. This is the only one doing well. That's 2 out of 3 not doing so well. It's going to be hard for these guys to get over the highs and keep going. Still looks the same to me, and that is that this is range bound until it proves it one way or the other, and so far it hasn't proved it. We'll see if they can push it higher. You got to lean to the long side, folks. You can't short this market yet. That time will come. It's just not here. I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Have yourself a great night. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Good night, folks.